What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2021 Cadillac Escalade. Huge thanks to Cadillac for providing me here with the all new Escalade to review for you guys today. So about the next generation Escalade, well, it is entirely new from the ground up. It's on an all new platform that's also shared with the Tahoe and Yukon, and it's a really great new platform. It gives you a little bit of a longer wheelbase and independent rear suspension, so you have much more third row leg room. It's a much roomier vehicle, it gives you a better ride. It's just such a huge improvement just on the new Tahoe that I reviewed a few months back. And so now with the Escalade here, well, obviously the styling and everything is completely unique to the Escalade here, and it is very impressive looking. I mean, right up front there, you can see just some nice simple headlights, but that grille is massive. And so that grille is unique here to the sport trims. That's why it's all blacked out. If you were to go for one of the other trims of the Escalade, you'll have more chrome there and a little bit more bright work and stuff. But this one is definitely menacing here with all the blacked out look. You'll also see that blacked out trim here going down to the sides, around the windows, and also that C-pillar treatment would otherwise be bright work on the other versions of the Escalade, but that's all blacked out here as well. But I mean, it just really gives this vehicle a sinister look, even with this white color, but looks really good. It's just so tall, that front end. I think that's the thing that really stands out is, I mean, this like front grille here is like almost up to like my shoulders. Like, it is so tall. It's kind of crazy and very imposing in person. Also, another thing that's impressive, you have 22-inch wheels here coming down to the sides as well that are actually, they don't look that big considering just how massive this vehicle is. Usually 22-inch wheels, you think that's like an enormous wheel size, but on this it's merely adequate, I think, for this vehicle. They could even go bigger if they wanted, because they nicely fill out the wheel wells here, but you know, they aren't huge by any means in the context of this vehicle. Otherwise though, out back you have the distinctive Escalade taillights, which they usually, it's a signature thing the past few generations where they go the full height of the vehicle there, and it's a really cool look. These ones also have this cool little illumination that happens whenever you you know, open the hatch and come up to the vehicle and stuff, and they look very, very nice. And then just, you know, nice and simple in the back. I do like the little exhaust finishers you have here on the sport trim. They look really nice, but overall I don't think they really overdid it with the styling of the Escalade, especially here with the sport trim. It's a more low profile kind of look, but I certainly, you know, think that it does look very good as well. If you get all the, you know, chrome grille and all that kind of stuff, I think that looks really good and very much appropriate for the type of vehicle this is. But I think they did a really nice job of, you know, keeping it restrained here with the styling, but still keeping it very classy as well. All right, so start up and go for a drive. The Escalade here has the new Cadillac key, which is really nice. It's just a cool shape. It's the same key you get with a new Corvette, actually, as far as the shape, but really nice there with the little, you know, chrome trim and the badging there. And then on the back here, just a few buttons here. It still feels pretty premium. It's probably not the highest quality key out there as far as feel goes. This isn't wrapped in leather or anything, it's just plastic, but still is a nice key and I like it a lot. But of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start here in the Escalade. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. And if you're curious to hear about the interior in the Escalade, my wife and I actually just did a full in-depth interior review on this vehicle, so I will link that above. You can go watch that if you want to hear all our thoughts on this interior. But overall, I mean, it is stunning. I think the interior is the biggest wow factor of the Escalade, honestly. I think that's even more interesting than the driving dynamics of the Escalade. This interior just is pretty mind-blowing in most ways. They just knocked it out of the park. It is hands down one of the nicest SUV interiors you can get for any money, honestly. And it's so, so impressive, so well worth its as tested price on this one of $113,000. Yes, it's that nice. So definitely go watch that interior review for all the details on this impressive interior. All right, so setting off here in the 2021 Escalade. Well, the first thing you probably notice about this vehicle is you're sitting up nice and high, very high here in the Escalade. I mean, you feel like you're really pretty king of the road. I mean, you're sitting up even higher than a lot of crossover SUVs. And so you have a very commanding view of the road. Excellent visibility here in the Escalade as well. You have a nice large windshield. The A-pillar is a little bit thicker, but with how massive this vehicle is, it feels totally appropriate. Does not get in your way whatsoever, even with this little A-pillar blockage here. Not an issue at all. I have no problems problems with visibility there. View out of the back is also fantastic because you have Cadillac's camera rear view mirror that they have, and so you have an unobstructed view behind you, even if you have a ton of stuff and people loaded up in the back, no problem, because again, it's just the camera and it bypasses all that. Now you can't flip it down and have a normal mirror if you do want that, but honestly I think the camera works great most of the time and is really nice to have. So other things though, just cruising here on a park road at a slow speed, it's very just relaxed in the way that everything is set up. That is one thing that I noticed. Throttle response is, pretty relaxed. The brakes especially are very relaxed. And one thing that I really actually so far have not been enjoying is just how much effort you have to put into the brake pedal. Like, I gotta really push this brake pedal pretty hard in order to get it to do the kind of braking I want it to do. I wish the brake pedal was much more sensitive. I mean, the good thing about this brake pedal is that it's very easy to be smooth. You can really be rough with this brake pedal and you have very mild braking that happens. But if you're just wanting to have a quick response, this is not a responsive brake pedal. I think that is a glaring thing that I'm kind of a little bit irked by. We'll see over my next 48 hours of driving how I get accustomed to that, but not in love with the brake feel. Other things though, I think steering weight is very appropriate, very just nicely weighted and accurate, and feels pretty good so far. And you just have the nice hum of the V8 engine behind you there, and that's about it. Otherwise, it's pretty quiet in here. You don't really hear much of anything, which is really nice. And so it's very refined, and having that V8 is also a nice thing to have, considering some of the competitors don't offer V8s anymore, and certainly not naturally aspirated simple V8s like you get here in the Cadillac, although it is still pretty advanced. It has cylinder deactivation that's even more advanced than it has been in the past and stuff, but still nice to have just a naturally aspirated V8 here. But I went ahead and put it up into the sport mode here. Let's turn down onto this back road and see how it does. Here we go. Very responsive. Wow, no delay. It takes off very nicely here. Wow, yeah, it's a strong motor. It's the same, a 6.2 liter naturally aspirated V8. You get in other GM trucks like this. And in this application, it has 420 horsepower, 460 pound-feet of torque, and 0 to 60 here for the new Escalades. According to Motor Trend, it was about 6.1 seconds. I think Car and Driver got 5.9 seconds for the ESV version, which should actually be technically slower. So somewhere in the 6-second range is what you can expect, 6 basically on the dot. And that feels very accurate, very appropriate. I mean, it is very strong and mighty with the way that it accelerates, and that is really nice to have that immediate response. A lot of the other stuff out there, with their turbochargers and all that kind of stuff, they just have a little bit more of a delay, and this 10-speed automatic that these run too is very responsive. I really like this 10-speed auto. It usually is in the right gear, and it doesn't seem to hunt around too much in my experience. There isn't too much thinking involved. It just goes for it. And I mean, when you have this much power and a V8 engine, you don't really need to hunt around for gears a whole lot, because you're always going to have plenty of power to usually do whatever passing or accelerating you need to do. We're on a little bit of a rougher road here. This part's smooth, obviously nice and quiet. There's the rougher part, but it's a very dull hum. It does a really good job of being pretty refined. But we're coming up some corners here, and let's see how the Escalade handles them. So these 22-inch wheels will certainly help, just on Bridgestone touring tires, but this thing, it handles so good for what it is. For some massive thing that weighs over 6,000 pounds, I think it's like 6,036 pounds to be exact for this one. But it's even flinging my camera gear around back there because it's handling so well around these corners. I mean, really flat. There's almost no body roll. And this sport version also has many things helping it out. So sport and higher trims will not only give you a magnetic ride control suspension, but they also give you a limited slip differential, so that helps with putting the power down a little bit better. You also have an air ride suspension here in the higher trims of the Escalade too, so that should also help to give things a nice and smooth ride, but also firm things up whenever you want. Now there are limits. You can only go so hot into a corner before you start to be like, I'm being a little too optimistic with my performance potential in this thing. But as long as you're mindful of the weight and you're not driving at insane speeds, this thing handles itself very, very well and gives you a lot of confidence. So I know no one's going to be driving this like a sports car, so it's irrelevant for me to assess the handling like that. But just know that you can go around corners confidently in this, more confidently than the past Escalades and past other SUVs. And so, I mean, this feels really good. Maybe this isn't as dynamic as some of these slightly smaller three-row crossovers from luxury brands like, you know, the BMW X7. I did the V8 version of that and reviewed that, and that certainly is going to feel a little more dynamic than this, but that also feels a little, you're sitting a little bit lower in the X7 in vehicles like that. You know, they're not quite as large, they don't really tow as much. You know, there's a lot of other sacrifices there because those are not body on frame like this is. So I think, you know, that's just what you're going to get here. And comparing this to something like a Lexus LX, for example, the handling is much better in this. You have just much more confident handling, much more composed, a much smoother ride than you get in those. Now, those are a little more oriented towards off-road handling and off-road, you know, gear and stuff, whereas this is clearly focused about being on-road all the time. But, you know, it does a very good job with what it has to work with here. I think, you know, having that independent rear suspension here on this new generation of GM trucks really helps all of these to feel great. You know, I was really impressed with the Tahoe as well. But in the Escalade here, it's just even smoother, a little bit more polished, I think, than it was in the Tahoe, of course. And just feels really good. Yeah, this thing is still, it can accelerate like a monster if you wanted to. I mean, off the line, this thing really feels strong. And I'm just impressed though. I mean, the steering is, you know, fairly quick. It doesn't feel lazy or anything. Everything feels up to the task of, you know, if you're in a hurry and you're trying to rush around somewhere, this is going to keep up with you very nicely, and I don't think it's going to let you down as far as, you know, any kind of performance stuff goes. But now, even up at about 45 miles per hour here on this road that still is a little bit rougher, we've got some potholes and stuff here, and it just glides over it. I mean, yeah, you feel it, but it is really impressive. Those kind of potholes really do upset a lot of other, you know, less expensive and less luxurious cars. And the fact that, you know, that was the only one that kind of made its way into the cabin, you just felt. Otherwise, it's been soaking everything up so well, and again, keeps it nice and quiet in here too. And that's, again, when it's dead silent. If you do turn on this amazing stereo this thing has, you're not going to hear anything for sure, because you'll just want to be immersed in the sound of all of your favorite music with the most clarity you've probably ever heard it with this, you know, stereo. It's really, really impressive. Even if you are just focused on the driving experience, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with just how refined it is. Alright, so now we're out on the highway here in the Escalade, and I do have Super Cruise enabled, which is why I'm able to be hands-free here and allow it to do all the steering and you know, all the driving for me here with me paying attention. It does have a sensor that makes sure that you're paying attention to the road, you're, you know, monitoring what's going on, and you're ready to take over if need be, because it is still not fully autonomous, but it's as close as you can actually get here in any car these days. It's even better than the Tesla system, because their system doesn't have any kind of driver monitoring. I think this is a lot more responsible, and it's doing a very good job. I actually was able to do a road trip in a CT6 with the first generation of Super Cruise a few years ago, and I was very impressed with it even back then, and so I'm excited here to test it out here. We're going around some corners on this highway in western Pennsylvania. We do have lots of corners on our highways here, and this road, you can see it actually has a little bit of a weird paving, but you can see it still clearly identifies the road lines there, and it's not having any issues with, you know, trying to pick up those road lines there. And whenever it does have any kind of hesitations or anything, it will flash on the steering wheel here with the green to give you a little bit of a warning, and then if it's really struggling, it'll go to yellow, and then eventually go to red if it sees that you're not, you know, paying enough attention or whatever. But it's flawless. You know, I will continue to test this. I'm going to have this vehicle for another 48 hours or so. I'm going to do a lot more Super Cruise driving and continue to test this system out. But I loved it in even the first generation application, the CT6. I was like, if you're going to be doing road trips on a regular basis and you can afford a CT6, I don't know why you would buy anything else, because nothing else offers you hands-free driving, and this is truly next-level luxury. I honestly would rather be in an Escalade with Super Cruise than being in a Bentley Bentayga or something that you still have to drive yourself. I mean, yes, you still got to do the driving most of the time, but, you know, on the highway here, there's nothing better and more luxurious than this. Because one thing that I noticed, especially with my CT6 road trip, is the difference between having your hands on the wheel and allowing it to do the guidance for you versus a truly hands-free experience where I can actually leave my hands on my legs here and just watch. It really does take away a lot of fatigue. I know it's a first world problem of the highest order, but still, the fact that you don't have to actually bother with your hands on the wheel makes it so much more relaxing on these highway drives and stuff, and it really is super impressive. I cannot praise Super Cruise enough. I think it's fantastic. This new generation, in my first few minutes of driving here, it still gives me 100% confidence. It knows what it's doing. It gives me a lot of information. It can also now do the automated lane changes, so I can put the turn signal on, and it will do the lane changes for you most of the time. Now I'm getting off of an exit here, so it's saying, it actually tells me why it wouldn't do the lane change. It says you're going into an exit lane, that is why it's not doing the lane change. So I'll test out the automated lane change feature a little bit later on here and continue to test out this Super Cruise system, but it's very impressive. I love it. I think GM has nailed what luxury semi-autonomous type of driving can be, and yeah, it's very, very cool tech. I think they've just done that very, very well. But I will continue to test that. I'll also continue to test out everything else here in the Escalade here over the next 48 hours, and I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world fuel economy, my thoughts on the pricing and its competition, and anything else here that I noticed during my couple of days of driving here. Alright, so it's about 24 hours later here, and I'm continuing to test out the Super Cruise system here in the Escalade, and I've been very impressed with it. I tested it out a bunch at night. That worked very well, and out here in the daylight here, I'm on some tighter corners that I haven't taken yet with this version of Super Cruise, just to see how good it is. And so, I mean, these are pretty tight corners, way tighter than what you get on most highways in America, and it's handling it all very well, and it's confident in the way it handles it. It's never getting too close to the lanes. It's never freaking me out or even making me be like, I'm never really worried with Super Cruise, and that is so elusive in so many of these other systems that have some type of steering assist in them. This one is just so reassuring. We got more tight corners here. I'm just going to hover my hands just in case, because we got a car near us here, but it's really doing a pretty good job. I mean, this is a tight corner, guys. I mean, you can see, and I mean, I'm not going very quickly. I'm doing less than 60 miles per hour here, just because that's the flow of traffic in the right lane here. But it really is just doing such a good job. I mean, yeah, it's not struggling. It's making sure that it's staying, pretty well centered in the lane. And yeah, I'm really impressed with the way this system is handling itself. It really does a good job. It's also very impressive with its lane changes. So the lane changes, in some others, you can request it, and I feel like sometimes it takes a little bit longer. I don't have extensive experience testing the lane changes in other vehicles, but in this, I was kind of shocked how quickly it did it. If it sees it, it looks for an opening, but if it sees an opening and it's ready to go, it makes the lane change, and it's very quick and precise with the way that it does that. So we can even try it out here now. And it says, waiting for the opportunity, and then it just comes right over and it does the lane change. Unfortunately, you do have to put it back off, I guess, so that it knows you're done trying to change lanes. But it does it all, and it's just so wild to be able to just sit here and talk and really not worry quite as much about all the little steering adjustments and stuff, because it just feels so solid. Honestly, I think Super Cruise, which is a $2,500 option, by the way, on the Escalade, I think that it basically makes it the best, most luxurious SUV you can get, just because of that feature. And I think this feature alone allows me to recommend this over all the competitors. There's many other ways, which I'll get to in a minute, where this is very competitive with its competition as well. But just on Super Cruise alone, on those merits alone, I think this is well worth getting the Escalade over whatever competitor you're considering. If you do any kind of road tripping whatsoever, I think that the Super Cruise is going to prove its worth very, very quickly and win you over pretty fast. I mean, the first time anyone experiences this, it's kind of mind-blowing just how well it works, and just how good GM is with keeping you informed of what's going on with this little green bar on the steering wheel, with little stuff in the gauge cluster telling you what's going on and why it's doing what it's doing and stuff. It's very comforting and reassuring. So I'll get off my soapbox here about how much I love Super Cruise, but it's hands down the best driver's assistance system out there, period. bar none. I just love it. But yeah, otherwise, I've just continued to really enjoy my time in the Escalade here. It is just so luxurious, so great. Between the massage seats, the amazing stereo, so many things about this vehicle. If I was actually going to have a commuter vehicle and I needed something with 3 rows and I could afford an Escalade, hands down, an Escalade is what I think I would get. And I'll talk more about that when I get to the competition here in a second. But first, I want to talk about fuel economy. So, admittedly, I didn't have a ton of time, obviously, to drive this vehicle with this 48-hour loan, but I did manage to put so far 78 miles on the Escalade, and my average fuel economy has been 13.5 mpg. And that's pretty impressive considering these are rated at 14 mpg in the city, 16 combined, and 19 on the highway. And so, you know, my driving, I would say, was close to 50-50, but honestly, I did do a little bit more city driving and suburban around town type of driving. So to be getting almost that city rating is pretty good, because usually in big gas guzzling heavy vehicles like this, it's sometimes even hard to get that, you know, EPA rating. And so the fact that I'm almost at that city rating, I'm pleasantly happy with. Obviously, you're talking about fuel economy in the teens, so if you're worried about fuel economy, you're looking at the wrong vehicles, honestly. Although there are a few ways to get better fuel economy in an Escalade if you really do want an Escalade. So first off, you can this is the all-wheel drive version. You can skip the all-wheel drive, go for rear-wheel drive. You get 1 better MPG that way. The biggest way to get better fuel economy, though, is with the diesel engine that's available at no extra cost. The same price for diesel or V8. It's a 3-liter Duramax inline-6 turbo diesel engine, and it actually, although it has less horsepower, it has just the exact same amount of torque as you get with this V8. So from seat of your pants type of feeling, it should feel pretty close to being as quick as this V8, although you will probably have a little bit of turbo lag and stuff like that, but it's not going to feel probably as good as the V8 does here. But the diesel should still be, you know, a very strong option. And the biggest thing with that is that you get 6 better MPG for city and combined ratings, and 7 better on the highway, which will greatly increase your highway fuel range as well. And so, I mean, at that point, I mean, with the diesel, you're comfortably in the 20s in all metrics. And so if you're worried about fuel economy even just a little bit, I think the diesel is a very good choice still. I'm so glad that they're offering the diesel in here for those who do want a little bit better fuel economy. And then the last thing to mention here is the pricing of the Escalade. So they aren't cheap. So, you know, they do start in the low 80s, but this one has tested as a fully loaded Platinum Sport model that retails for $113,000. So let me unpack that very large number. So, like I said, they start in the low 80s, and depending on how you configure it, you can actually get a very nice Escalade still in the, you know, like mid to high 80s, even with a lot of really nice equipment on it. For example, if you're okay foregoing the air suspension, you know, you can still get one of these that's only about $3,000 more than like a Yukon Denali, for example, and you get like these digital gauges as standard. You get this huge, you know, 38-inch OLED curved display. All that is still standard, and so, you know, you get a lot of really high-end stuff that definitely puts this above the Yukon, and you know, gives you something that, you know, is going to be, I think, a really good value whenever you consider it in that context. For $3,000 more than Yukon Denali, hands down, I would much rather have this interior. Yes, you don't get all the same features. You don't get the massage seats. You don't get as many of the crazy things you get in this one. So it just depends on, you know, what kind of equipment you're looking for. But you can have an Escalade for a fairly minimal upcharge, honestly, over, you know, even a fully loaded high country version of a Tahoe or something. So I think that there is a strong business case to be made for the Escalade, and, you know, it's basically just because of how expensive the Tahoe and the Yukon are also getting. I mean, you can max out a Tahoe at $80,000, you can max out a Yukon Denali for like $84,000. So, you know, $87,000 at that point, you're talking about very small percentages of price increases. I'd go for the Escalade all day, every day. You know, and also that $113,000 price tag, you got to consider what this is competing against. This is competing against a fully loaded Navigator Black Label. Guess what? Those, actually, if you want a black appearance package, which Lincoln strangely charges $6,700 for, that actually puts you at $110,000 for one of those Navigators. Now, if you knock that silly pricing package off with the black package and you're okay with the chrome and stuff, you can get a Navigator for, you know, like maybe $103 or so, which has most of the same equipment this does. But I think the Escalade still has some stuff that, you know, gives it a leg up over the Navigator. Again, the tech in here, when you look at the other interiors in anything that this competes against, they all just look kind of old-fashioned, honestly, compared to the massive screens you get in this. But honestly, the way that I would spec an Escalade, there's a few options I could even do without. Like, this has this night vision camera, which is cool, but to me, not very useful. That's $2,000. Knock that off. There's a towing package I wouldn't use. Knock that off. There's a few other things. You can custom tailor these. So in reality, like the one that I would build, even if it was fully loaded, would be $110 for an Escalade here. And then you can even still be very happy with like a, you know, one of those platinum luxury versions that's, you know, still going to be in the high 80s, low 90s, still has like this really impressive stereo, all those types of things as well. So, you know, it just really comes down to what you're looking for, but I think this is still, like I said, very impressive, very competitive with everything else out there, because you also have to consider outside of the Navigator, nothing else is really body on frame. So you do have the luxury 3 rows like the BMW X7 and the GLS, which, by the way, all of those also do get to about 110 grand whenever you load them up to be comparable to this. None of them have Super Cruise, by the way, either. They have advanced driver assistance stuff, but none of them are hands-free like Super Cruise. So those are still 110, and you can't tow as much in those. You can't do as much in those. They're smaller, they're more cramped. I've reviewed an X7. I mean, the third row in that thing is, you know, borderline, you know, not useful for adults. It is tight. This has tons more space. So really, I think the only fair comparison to this is the Navigator, and I think that this is much nicer than the Navigator. I love the Navigator. I reviewed one a couple years ago when they came out. They're very impressive, but they were very impressive 3 years ago. Now, this is the new leader, in my opinion, and it is nice to have the simplicity of the V8. The twin-turbo V6 in the Navigator, you know, might require a little more maintenance down the road than this V8. Maybe not, I don't know, but I just think having a good old-fashioned V8 that sounds great, by the way, is just really a nice thing to have. And like I said, you can't get the diesel if you do want some better fuel economy. So I think Cadillac really has, I guess, covered both angles there, you know, if you're someone who is considering a Navigator, where I think the Escalade clearly does come out ahead. So yeah, and I mean, also one last little thing that the Escalade here does come out ahead with too is depreciation. So, as far as depreciation goes, according to CarEdge.com, the Escalade is actually the leader as far as all the vehicles I was mentioning. The depreciation for an Escalade is somewhere around like 53% depreciation after about 5 years, which isn't spectacular, but it's also, like I said, the best in this segment of vehicle, because even a Navigator, they say, will depreciate about 60% or so over those same 5 years. The BMW and the Mercedes are also going to be in the same kind of high 50% depreciation range. I think they're like 58 or so percent. So honestly, you'll lose less money with an Escalade than you will with the German brands, than you will with a Navigator, even if you do decide to sell it in 5 years. I mean, yes, you still are, you know, losing 53% of the price of this vehicle in 5 years, but that's just the nature of luxury vehicles. So overall, I can't find a single thing to fault about the Escalade. I think it's fantastic. They just came out swinging 100%, hands down. If I was shopping for a luxury 3-row crossover and I can afford this, this would be my pick. It's very easy for me to recommend this as the top pick. It's not even close in my mind. It's not something I have to even think more than 2 seconds about. Like, it's the Escalade all day, every day. It's that good. Definitely worth checking out if you're someone considering one of these. But yeah, so that's about all my thoughts here on the Escalade. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Cadillac for providing me here with this new Escalade to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.